You're listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast, celebrating hunting dog heritage, competition, and community. United Kennel Club has been the hunting dog sports home for coonhounds, beagles, retrievers, pointers, cur, feist, and more for over 125 years.
Hey, welcome to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast. My name is Todd Kellam. I'm a vice president at UKC, and I am so happy to have in the UKC studio today my friend, co-worker, Shannon Nardi.
Hey, Todd.
We've been wanting to do this for a long time.
I know.
But I love to do them in studio, all right? And so with UKC Premiere going on right now, I'm thinking, who's going to be in town that I can talk to? Shannon. So it's just a perfect opportunity, and we want to learn all about Super Retriever Series.
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot.
It's a story. It's a story, and I know just enough about it to be dangerous. That's all. So I love it, and I'm so glad you're here to explain it.
Yeah.
But first of all, let's learn who's Shannon Nardi, and I want you to tell some of the stories about your dad and how you kind of got into the position you're in today with the many hats that you wear, which is a lot.
Well, I got honestly, I got married at a young age and moved to St. Louis, had children, and worked at a hospital in data processing.
I did not know that.
For 18 years.
Wow.
And my father was at that time pretty heavily into ESPN Outdoors. He was one of the kind of a co-founder of that, along with
and some of the shows
producers
that he produced that people would know.
That still are airing would be Bassmasters and Steel Timber Sports, which is probably the longest.
Yeah,
one of the longest.
I love that.
And then at the time, at the peak time, we were probably producing, I don't know, maybe 10 half-hour outdoor programs of some kind. The ESPN Outdoor Block, which was the whole block of shows that all came to our office, and we put them all together, along with Tommy Sanders doing, little stories in between each show. And so those were called wraps, and we'd do all the wraps.
And were you doing it full time at that point?
Yeah. So when that started happening, when ESPN2 came out, we started doing that block. And then at that time, he approached me about possibly working for them.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I was so excited about that. I was nervous because I didn't really know.
It wasn't your
done
background.
No,
at that
not
point,
at
right?
all. So I jumped in. My first feature I ever did was for People, Places, Things, and Animals, which was a little wraparound, and I did it on the Galapagos turtles.
Oh, jeez.
And I was scared to death. It took me a week to do a 2-minute feature.
So there's your love of salt life too.
Yeah. So I did that. I did a bunch of features in the very beginning, and we were also I think our company was the first ones to do the FLW tour at that time. So we were doing all those bass events, and then I got really lucky because I really loved it. I worked on Spanish Fly, which was my first half-hour program with Jose Wahebi.
Yeah.
So I did that for probably 6 years until the Great Outdoor Games started. And then everything kind of turned to dogs.
Yeah.
I got stuck doing dogs at the Great Outdoor Games, and then I was the dog girl at JM, but I fell in love with it, and I was so glad that I got that part of the job.
Was Great Outdoor Games then the start of SRS?
Yes. So Great Outdoor Games started in the year 2000, and Great Outdoor Games was like the Olympics for the outdoors. You had bass fishing, fly fishing, shooting sports, archery. And then the dog sports, which were agility, fly ball, retrievers, and big air, which is dock diving.
Yeah.
But it was on the lake. So it was like back then everybody did it on the dock on the lake. Yeah. And so that's how that kind of all started. I got put in the Venue F, which was retrievers. I had no idea anything about what that meant. I was working for a producer, Bill Fitz, who I was scared to death of. But who's turned out to be a mentor.
Yeah.
He actually produced the first 6 Super Bowls.
Oh, geez.
So it was really cool to.
Yeah, I see why you're scared to death.
Yeah, I was scared to death. I promise you, because he was a tough producer, and so I was kind of scared of him. But I really got to where I worked with him for 5 years on that, and really got to know him better, and had a lot of respect for him. But the first 2 years were the retrievers were hand picked. People that were good had a good retriever.
Yeah.
Yep. And then it rated really well. of a lot of the games, it was one of the higher rated ones.
Yep.
So ESPN was like, look, we don't want to handpick. We want to qualify. So we started holding these qualifiers to get the 12 dogs.
Okay.
And that's what the Super Retriever Series became, was the qualifier for the
and
games.
Then the outdoor games, that didn't last too much
the
longer,
outdoor
did
games stopped. I think it actually went a couple years after 2005, which is when they stopped retrievers.
Oh.
Because they went to Florida, and number one, Florida was not a good place for retrievers. So they still did big air and those things. But they gave us our own 2-hour special in 2005 to do our own championship, which became the Crown Championship.
Yeah.
And
which we'll talk about in a little while.
Yeah. And then they decided to do soccer. So the outdoors kind of just went away from ESPN because soccer was becoming their jam. And so I kind of left my father's company because of that, which was it was a
cordial.
It was cordial,
thing.
But kind of not at the beginning, but kind of,
Because I remember meeting at your headquarters, I don't know how many years ago that was, that you and I were there. And so I got to meet your dad. He walked in, he's happy, and oh man, I was so glad to get to meet him. He's on the White River down there in Arkansas where his place is. And all I want to do is talk to him about fly fishing for trout. And he walks in and says, "Where are you from?" I said, "Michigan." "Do you smallmouth fish?" I'm like, "No, not at all."
That's his favorite.
And he was
that
like,
was his favorite. That was his favorite
So,
kind of fishing, was smallmouth fishing.
He was fun to talk to.
But I had to go say, look, I really want to take SR, because it was going to just stop. I mean, it was like, they're not doing it, we're not doing it. And I'm like, no. So I was like, I really want to take this, because it was moving and it was growing. And I said, let me just take this. I'll start my own company. And the only reason I did that was because I was going to take it to a different network.
Okay.
And Dad was kind of like, he bled ESPN, and it was like, we're not going to another network.
Yeah.
So I just took it and went to Outdoor Life
So when
Network.
you say you started your own company, would that have been Dancing Dogs?
Yes, that was Dancing Dog Productions.
And I got to know where the name from that came from.
Most people don't know that. Isn't that funny? So my young life, from 6 years old till high school, I graduated, I was a classical ballet dancer.
Really?
Daily. I was in class more than I was doing anything. That's what I did.
Wow.
So that was the first part of my life. And then I got into these dogs, and that became the second part of my life. So I just called my company.
I can remember before I even knew you, I've been seeing this Dancing Dogs. I'm like, I always kind of.
I know, everybody's like, do you have dancing dogs? I'm like, no.
I always kind of wondered. What's that?
So I took
what
Gia.
Year would that have been then?
That was 2005 that I made that. And I took Gia, and I had one of my friends, Kevin Witherspoon, who was an artist. He took Gia, drew a little cartoon and put it, lab. My old lab, and put a little tutu on her, and that was my logo.
Oh, okay.
So that's how that all happened.
Yep.
But anyway, so I started that, and at that time I was doing 2 shows. I did Water Dog for Outdoor Life Network, and I did Super Retriever Series.
Okay.
And we just kept rolling.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a steady growth ever since. It's never been a lot of events until right now it's kind of exploding. But for a long time, you concentrated on putting on a few very well organized.
And it's because I really just stuck with that 12-guy championship mentality.
Oh.
It was easy to build stories with just 12 guys and to, build a drama, which, if you think about the guys that were back in the early 2000s that were on the shows, their careers were, people just loved them, or they loved a certain guy because of whatever reason, because they knew him.
Yeah, you get to where you're following them, right?
Yeah. So people were following certain guys and they're rooting for them. And, that's my guy. And so we stuck with that kind of concept, and which I liked.
And at that time, was it a pro and amateur mix?
No, it was just a mix, but it wasn't separated.
Okay.
It was just.
But there were some from
There
both
were some
walks.
amateurs and there were some pros, yes. And we had probably 3 to 4 events a year to qualify for the championship. We'd take 12 dogs, and that's what we did. And that kind of
do you remember
stayed
who
for
some
a
of the
while.
early participants were that some of our listeners will remember?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I remember their dogs more than I remember them.
Yeah.
But I do. And I actually was just talking about that with some people last night. So the early guys, and gals too, is like the ones that stick out were obviously like Jerry Day and Super Sue.
Okay, yeah.
Chris Aiken and Boomer.
Yep.
Alex Washburn and Ticket. Scott Greer and Liza. Brody Best and Jazz. Stacey West and Rankin. I mean, those were the
those
J.
are the
Paul
stars.
and Achilles. Those were all the stars,
Yeah.
And I'm sure I forgot some, and I'm sorry.
Well, that's the danger in asking
yeah,
to recall,
I know, asking that question.
It just gives some people an idea of the era.
Well, I was talking about it because here's what's so cool. So Scott Greer and Liza, they started playing the game when SRS started, back behind Max Prairie Wings in Stuttgart. And Liza was his personal dog, even though he turned pro, and that was his personal dog. Yep. And they were the team, and everybody loved Scott and Liza. First team of the year winners.
Oh, geez.
And he just won last weekend at Pepper's Pond with a dog named Piper, who's the 5th generation of Liza. And it's his dog. And that's just so cool. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a cool story to know that. So it's weird how, and some of the guys have, were in and then dropped out.
Oh, it depends if they got the right dog
at
the time. Part of
exactly.
Part of it.
So that's always happened. But we kind of stuck with the 3 or 4 events a year with the championship. And honestly, I think when we got to the COVID year, it exploded.
Yeah.
And it's because.
But somewhere in between there and COVID was when, talk a little bit about your SRS team. So I know some of your reps that help you with SRS, right? So at some point you had to start, you're building the numbers of events, you're wanting input from successful handlers and trainers on what you want to be testing or setting the
absolutely. The program it's changed so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually sent what we call the SRS board. I actually sent them a copy of our first rules that they never had seen.
Yeah.
That was like 10 rules on a piece of paper. I mean, seriously, it's what it was.
Right.
And now it's like, 20 pages of rules.
And how many guys on your board?
I have 4. I have 8.
Yeah.
I have 3 pro, 3 M, 1 judge that's been judging forever, and 1 organizer.
Yeah. And then running your events, talk a little about, when did Matt come on the scene?
Matt came on.
See, that was before I was even, brought into SRS a little bit through UKC.
He started from the get-go, like Bird Boy,
Yeah.
out in the field.
The whole process.
He knew the whole process up into being like our main field rep and marshal type thing. So he and probably 4 or 5 others are classified as a field rep.
Okay.
So right now we send one of those guys to every event to make sure it's run.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's unique about SRS, and that, man, talk about lending consistency, from event to event. That's how you do it.
Oh, yeah, it really is. And like, we didn't used to do that. I mean, it really wasn't. And we really were inconsistent, and we were growing, and things were changing. And, I didn't have that board of guys that could really help, make everything right and put something on paper and like, this is how it's going to be, and we're going to stick to it. We're not going to change it. And we started that probably in 16, 17 maybe, and really started sticking to our guns on like, we're not changing rules in the middle of the season. We'll do it at the end of the year. If you have a request, send it in. And we're real open to listen to those. I mean, I'm real open to like, give me what you want to know. I'll tell you whatever, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
And if it makes sense, we'll try it. If it doesn't work, we're going to get rid of it, or we're going to
move on.
Or we'll keep it or whatever. But we're real open to that, which I want to be that way with people, because they have their opinions and I want to hear them. But I do think our consistency really changed starting at that time, and it's gotten just so much better. And it was really the participants that requested, look, we need a marshal. We need somebody that can help some of these judges, to understand how we need they wanted the game to be like it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. It's coming up. It's a little bit different on the format. So when you bring judges in, they need some education, because this is unlike anything they've ever.
Yeah. A lot of times the judges come in, they're knowledgeable about retrievers, they're knowledgeable about setting up a test and bird placement and those kind of things. Yep. But our game is not a standard, and that's what they're most of them are used to as a standard.
Yep.
And we're competitive. It's competition.
Right.
So
It's
they kind of have
not pass fail like a lot of hunt tests.
Yes. So it's competition, and they kind of have they have free reign to kind of set up what they want. If it, you can't get. Most people think we do all these crazy things, and we really don't.
Oh, no, we'll talk about that too, because I have seen some crazy things. That's
it may be crazy, but it's not something that couldn't happen.
That's right.
It could happen. If it can happen in the hunting field, then it can happen.
Yeah, I don't mean
But I mean, people get this in their heads like, well, they do some crazy things. I'm like, no, we really don't. But they do have free reign. So I think the judges like that. But you also have to, that's why our field reps there, to make sure that everything's still competitive, it makes sense, and not too out of line.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's why they're there.
Okay. So then let's talk a little bit about what an SRS event looks like. First of all, who can enter? Let's talk about that.
In the early days, we said you had to have a CH title or a qualified all age or a master hunter title.
Right.
Now we say, we suggest that you have that.
Okay.
Okay. So because it is a higher level game.
Yep.
And we don't want people to come and pay the entry and then be like, oh, wow, my dog.
I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for that, and be upset about it. So, you have to have a dog that's at that level. And you have to have a dog today. Now, maybe not so much in the early years, but today you have to have a dog that has experience in all three games out there. The field trial game, the hunt test game, the master hunter game.
Yep.
And for us, you have to have one that's probably duck hunted.
Yeah.
Because he's going to get something like that thrown at him.
And the reason you suggest that, from my observation, was, and we can talk about the number of rounds you have at an event, but you have a round dedicated to each of those disciplines.
Yes. So, we have 4 series. Our championship has 5, but the regular club of qualifiers have 4 series. The first one, if it's a field trial, the second one has to be a hunt test.
Okay.
If the first one's a hunt test, the second one has to be a field trial. So you're given an opportunity to where you might have strengths in those first 2 series. And then we make a cut. And then the third series is always some kind of hybrid usually, or a hunt savvy. And the 4th series is one of those 2.
Yeah.
And the reason I think that is because hunt savvy, there's a lot more going on at a hunt savvy test.
Oh,
so
man.
there's a boat, possible boat. There's
let me just explain. You've seen hundreds of them, dozens of them. I've seen one, and I was like, my jaw dropped. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I'm at the Arkansas Challenge that's at Pepper's Pond.
Event, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm there. We're in that series that you're talking about, and the handler is at the line, and when it's his turn, he's got to kind of run up there, put on a pair of waders, run down to the dog stand. While he's running down to the dog stand, some of the judges or the helpers are hollering at him like, you're late, you're supposed to be here a half hour ago, hurry up, ducks are flying. And then they start shooting live rounds, shotgun rounds into the pond.
from the bubble gummer?
Yeah, and then the dog's sitting there, and he's got to be steady through all that. And then, of course, they throw his marks, and I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, it can be like... But
they did it. They did the work.
Oh, yeah. It's like, it's funny, too, because if you go back 10 years, a lot of times, they had to sit remote. The dog had to be remote from the handler. And that still, that happens all the time, to be remote from the handler. And, 10 years ago, that was hard. Yeah. And they didn't train for that much. Now, it's like, those guys train for that.
They don't.
So they don't, it's like it's not even tempting to some of them anymore. They're just like, yeah, I'll sit over here.
Yeah.
But, I have video of the first time we did that, and it was hilarious because those dogs are like, wait a minute, why are you over there? I need to go by you. And, it was just a different time. And I definitely think that all the games and in our game, and the dogs and the handlers have just gotten so much better.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So then additionally, structure-wise, talk about the pro and amateur divisions, the differences there.
So in 2018 is when we really made a lot of changes. That was the year that we partnered with UKC as a registry. by request from most of the handlers, we divided and made it an open amateur division. So we divided into 2 divisions.
Yep.
So the amateur can obviously play in the open if they want. The pro players cannot play down. So
Correct.
So 2 different divisions. We developed a point system, which generates their qualifying points. It generates their title points, and it generates their team of the year points.
Okay.
And it's a point from first. They get points from 1st through 6th place.
Okay.
You know, so those points are doing 3 different things every year.
Yep.
And it's just worked out beautifully for that. So all those kind of things.
They all run in the same flight. So
they
you
all
have
run
pros
the same flight.
in the same tests, right? They're running the same test.
Yep.
They're just being ranked in their
Yep.
own.
We have 2 leaderboards.
Yep.
So there's 2 different leaderboards going, but they're all running the same test. They're all sorted in a random draw together. So it's like it makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
Just to run one test under one set of judges and get through it.
That was one of the things when I came away from that first SRS event, I was like, gosh, that was so cool because you got the pros, everybody's sitting there, you know, in the gallery, waiting their turn to run, and everybody's mixed together. It was it really had a family friendly feel to it. Everybody's, you know, cheering each other on. It was just, I just loved that part of it.
Yeah, it's good. And all the guys that run it are such fantastic guys, and they're so helpful to each other and like to new people that come. They're really giving and trying to help the new guy understand what the game is because it is different. You know, there's a lot of strategy, understanding the points and how why you're getting them. You know, all that stuff. There's a lot to it.
Yeah. So that may be next. Let's talk a little bit about, and I don't know how comfortable you are with this, but how they're judged is very different than another, because the judging is on a point system also.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about?
You know, in the beginning it was 2 and 5 points. We had plungers.
And that's for every time the dog makes a bobble. Yeah. He's getting nicked,
there was
right?
a whistle blow. If somebody was hitting a whistle, it was like a 2 point. And ESPN developed that plunger. And so that's how it started. They developed a plunger. And so the judges, there was 3 judges with plungers, and they were just there sitting and judging. And if they concurred within a couple seconds together.
He doesn't have a scorecard where he's right, -2, -2, -2. He didn't have to do that.
He was going 2, 5, 2, 5. It was 2s and 5. And
that makes sense to me now.
All 3 of them had to together hit that to record it.
Oh.
So if somebody didn't agree, like if 2 didn't agree and 1 gave it 2 and 2 didn't, it wouldn't record. So that's how it was done then. And it became where we're like, okay, sometimes they're a little slow on it and it got missed. So then we had another guy standing there watching those numbers going, nope, you missed it, hit it 2, you know. And that went on for, gosh, I think till 2008 or 9 we used those things. And then it was like, let's just, because it was getting old. We were going to have to get somebody to rewrite the program, and we were developing new points and new faults, and it was like, let's just write it on paper. Yeah. So that's how that started. So we developed a score sheet now that gives you a spot to put your check mark and then add the points up at the end of the end of the run.
But it is different for judges. So when they come in there, I know they have to get a little bit schooled on it. I've talked to some judges like Tracy says, you know, I love it. I love doing it, but you have to pay attention. You can't get lulled into talking to someone over here. It's like, no, when you're judging this, you got to pay attention.
You do have to pay attention. And that's our field rep job. He is sitting right there making sure that those guys are together. If they're off, like, you know, if their points are off, he's there to make sure to figure that out. Why are you off? What did you miss? You know, and then they can talk about that and get that figured out. They're usually they're usually within 2 points of each other, you know, which will possibly split the difference by the 1 point or whatever. But that's the marshal. That's his job, is to make sure that that's run tight, you know.
It's very interesting. And then talk about too how I guess we go into the crown, or how they qualify for the crown, and which ones are live streamed and are. Right now,
we just live stream the crown.
Right. But one of the first ones to do that, right? So, I mean, I was watching that live
and it's
stream.
gotten like last year was so fantastic. It was my favorite of all times was last year because it was just really good. It was good commentary.
And it was held
good competition.
Where was that one?
Shreveport, Bossier City. And we'll be back again this year.
But historically, we were in
Huntsville for years.
Yeah.
And before that, we were in Pepper's Pond for like 3 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then I think we were in Hot Springs for a couple. And then before
Pepper's
that was
Pond, for our
Great Outdoor
listeners,
Games.
is just north of Little Rock,
Yeah,
Arkansas.
yeah.
Yep.
Yep. And so we're in Shreveport right now, and we're going back there this year and possibly next year. We're talking about that right now. And so the city brings us in. And then,
they really support that.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah, they really do. And they bring us in, and they kind of wine and dine us in our banquet, and then really we're just like a traveling circus.
The rest of our staff here at UKC that Shannon is now a part of, and if I failed to mention it, you're a producer for our media team.
Yeah.
But I think the whole staff here has really learned a lot from you and what you're, the way you do your crown, and a lot of our events are getting similar support.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, that's my favorite part. I have my board of guys that really help me with
the rules and stuff.
Rules and
you
all
don't care.
I like trying to figure out how to make that a good week for everybody and produce it well to be entertaining for folks to watch and to learn the game. And, that's kind of that's my focus at the Crown. I mean, that's really where I'm at that
So
point.
the Crown takes place in what time?
It's this year, it's the end of October, beginning of November. Yeah. So right before duck season.
And who gets invited to the Crown?
Anybody that has earned 4 points.
Okay.
So like I said, we have a point system.
Yes.
It's always been first, second, and third gets an invite, and that's 6, 5, and 4 points.
Okay.
So if you got 4+ points, you're invited. And when we give out the placements 1st through 6th, that 4th, 5th, and 6th place gets 3, 2, and 1 points. Okay, they get points.
Yep.
So they can get 3 points coming in 4th place, and then maybe go run another event in the year and get 1 point, and now they're invited.
Yep.
So we kind of gave them an opportunity to try to invite more by earning those points to do so. We're halfway through this year of our 35 events, and we have 94 qualifiers.
Yeah, see, isn't it?
So it's like
it's growing.
It is growing. So that's a big change.
That takes how many days to run the Crown?
We're taking a whole week.
Yeah.
We added a day last year because of that. And we did get done early. Like, we got done a day early, which was great. And it gave me an opportunity to interview all the guys on Sunday morning that had placed. And I really liked having that time with them. But we didn't know if it had rained or we had a thunderstorm or anything like that. We would have totally used that day.
Yeah.
Because it's a different ball game at a Crown, because we are live streaming. Because we're not just dealing with running dogs. We're dealing with the production staff.
Well, you got to break
ready.
down all the...
Yeah. It's like it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And the guys that have been there for a long time, they know that.
Yeah.
So they've accepted it. But new guys are like, what's taking so long? Why are we waiting around? And it's like, well, you're waiting on us.
Well, you're moving backdrops and stuff that's not at a normal hunt test.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, we're putting cameras in the fields,
and
we got our talent getting ready, and we've got to get our signage in place, and everything has to be right before we can start. So it does take a challenge, a little bit more of a challenge. But that's part I love. I do love that part.
Yeah.
With Eukanuba, stamina is the one difference I'm seeing. When I'm running hair up north, my dogs will put on 10, 12, 15 miles of solid running, and they just don't tire as easily or as quickly. Oftentimes, my work schedule does not allow me to have the desired physical conditioning on my dogs, but even then, as many as 25 or more miles a day of hard running is just another day in the office. To me, it's been apparent Eukanuba's 30-20 sport formula is making that difference. Eukanuba, the official performance dog nutrition partner of UKC.
That's cool. Well, probably some of our listeners are familiar. I'm more familiar with the HRC end of the sport than field trials or master. What are some of the things that they would find similar or different from HRC? Can you think of some off the?
Well,
one is the bird. One is the birds right off the top.
Yes.
Right?
Now, that's another.
Talk about that.
A lot of people don't like the fact that we don't use real birds,
right?
Which they do in the other retriever sports. And the reason we never did is because ESPN was like, no, we want a retriever sport. We can't use real birds.
Right.
So that's how that came about. And we've just kind of stuck with that because we are televised.
And you know why else? Because no one complains about it.
No, they really don't. I mean,
when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, really? That doesn't. But you go to one and it's like, there's all the pros and they don't care. You know, the dogs don't care.
The dogs don't care. I mean, they're trained in both ways. They're going to retrieve it matter what.
In a lot of ways, it probably makes your tests easier.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
Some of the challenges that those clubs face getting the birds.
Absolutely. That's a huge
play for
thing.
you.
But we use the Avery birds, and that has worked out for us for years, and that's been great.
You utilize the gun in so many.
We utilize the gun just
similar.
like we'll do an HRC style test all the time.
Same.
And then you go to the field trial, and I remember the first time we did that because I didn't. It's like we were going to put white coats in the field, and I was like, well, no, what is that? Why are we doing that? They're far, they're white. I didn't understand. And then I did a feature on it. We talked about it and did a 2-minute feature on it for the show so that people could understand where we put white coats in the field. They all threw a bird, and then 2 retired. So if you're sitting at a dog's point of view and looking out there and seeing that there's 3 white coats, and he goes and gets the first mark and comes back, and 2 of those white coats are gone, it does look different. So he's got to remember where those were without the white coats. Yeah. So that became the field trial part of the game.
Okay.
And then the master tests they use a gun, but it's more of a wooden gun.
Yeah,
and the sounds are more in the field.
Yeah.
So it's similar to the hunt test, but just a little bit different. I think the field trial is definitely the big different. Big and long.
The most different.
And then hunt savvy. I mean, most of the guys that run our event have duck hunted. So they're, that's their favorite part, I think. Yeah. I think it's a little nerve-wracking, a lot to remember. I mean, our crown last year, it was a lot to remember.
Oh, yeah.
Because they came in, they put their dog in a dog hut. They had a boat next to them on a trailer, but it was next to them. They sat in the little seat next to the dog hut. The boat had bubba gunners shooting birds. They got told to get up and go put a decoy. The decoy fell over. Go put that decoy back up. So he's walking out there to put a decoy on the thing while his dog's watching him from the hut.
Yeah.
And then the birds come in while he's out there, of course. So they're shooting marks while the dog's here. Then they come back and have to pick this one up and run this really long blind. They have to go through 2 geese to get there. And, so it's just a lot going on. Yeah, and I was just like, oh my gosh, how can I? Now, what are they doing?
Who thinks that stuff?
I'll tell you who did. It was Dana Giovanello, Michael Dimmer, and Jamie Moss.
Oh, man.
It was a lot of fun, though. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So one of the ways that it differs from HRC that you've already touched on is the dogs are placed, where in HRC it's a pass-fail setup. Dogs are placed. And also, we haven't talked about the purse, but these guys are running for
they're
purse,
getting,
right?
They're getting a purse. So the purse, the entry at any club event is part of it goes to the club to put the event on. Yeah. A percentage of it goes to 1st through 3rd place, which is always what we paid, 1st through in pro and am, based on their actual entry.
Yep.
And then part of it goes to SRS, and part of it goes into a pot, like the crown pot.
Okay.
So that builds over the year.
Yep.
And then whatever the entry is at the crown also goes into that pot. And last year it was.
But even the local events are paying a purse.
Sure. Yeah. They're getting I think they get 25% of the purse of the entry. So that can be good sometimes.
That differs between the pros and the AMs. Yes. That's one of the differences in those.
Because the pros paying $250 to enter, and the AMs paying $150 to enter.
Right.
So that is different. And then based on the number of pros.
That was a good way to set that up, I think. Whoever thought that. I thought that makes sense.
It's and I don't think a lot of people know that. We don't really put that out there, and I've talked about putting it out there.
No, and it may not be the reason they're going. I'm sure it doesn't hurt. You got to keep a truck on the road, but
I don't think it is because it's not like. The crown payout's pretty nice.
Yeah,
like our pro got. I'm wanting to say 28.
Yeah.
$5,000, and I think the amateur got 13 or 17 or something. I can't even remember now.
That's a
so
nice,
it was.
nice
I mean, the
payday.
total purse package was like plus prizes, but the cash was like 70,000, and the prizes it was like 125,000 person money. So that was the biggest we've ever had, and it was just impressive.
It
to
is
me.
impressive.
But I also think that money isn't as enticing to them as the prestige of having the title.
Yeah, I agree.
And having that dog
and like
as
we
a champion.
talked earlier, a lot of these dogs are already very well accomplished in another game,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
So you take an HRC Grand, see he's already earned his Hall of Fame. He's passed his Grands and he's got his points, and this is the next level for them to go do something, right? And now they can go compete for a guy that's competitive.
Oh yeah, and I think that's part of it too. I think the guys that play
and
this
some of
game,
those Grands are young, right?
Yeah.
So that dog's got a lot of years left. He's trained. They want to keep him in training.
Yeah. I mean, but here's the thing: most of these dogs, even though they've gotten those titles and the other, like a Grand title or a Master Hunter title, they're still playing those games too.
Yeah.
And I just think it's the competitive part that they like about it. But I just think the guys that play these games and the girls, they just like playing the game.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it is.
And maybe they're wanting to pick on some of the more premier events closer to home too.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Another nice part of it.
Yeah, that's for sure, no doubt.
Well,
but I'm really excited about, like, as I just mentioned, we have girls, and we had like, I think there was 5 girls at the Crown Championship last year, which is great.
I think all those dog sports are seeing that.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
All the dog sports are seeing women,
it's awesome.
Women getting involved. We should talk a little bit about the relationship with HRC.
Yeah.
Because I can remember, like you said, it was 2018, and I went in there and say, hey, I go to the national meeting and talk to the executive committee one-on-one, me and them. And I'm like, I was sweating bullets. I didn't really know what the relationship was, but I'm like, because we have such a good relationship with HRC, I don't want to jeopardize that, but I said, I really want to work on this program with SRS. And I'm telling you, they didn't even bat an eye. It was like, yeah, man, that's great.
That's good.
You guys have always worked together
absolutely.
well, right? On scheduling.
Yeah, I always call Tracy. Tracy is so good about letting me know when the Grand's going to be, like, far in advance, so that I can make sure that I'm not going to jump on his toes. He's not going to get on mine, or we can. I actually traded with them a couple years ago because I think something happened with the water, or that didn't rain, that was too dry. I can't remember the deal, but he's like, hey, can we switch? And I did. I switched with them.
Yeah.
Which, I'm glad to do that.
Yeah. Nope, it was, and I always thought from the start, I thought I remember back when I started with you that it was required that they had to be an HRCH, a CH, or a qual dog. Yeah. And I thought, that's pushing people to HRC's program.
Oh, 100%.
Before they can come to yours.
SRS has to have those programs.
Right.
It has to.
Yeah.
You have to go through those programs to really even be competitive.
I always thought that's why, that's why it was a good fit.
Yeah.
They can coexist peacefully and help each other. And,
That's right. That's right.
Oh man, that made it so much easier on me.
I'm so glad.
Should we talk? Are there any of your sponsors or partners you want to mention?
My partners right now are Eukanuba, they've just been a partner of ours forever.
And kudos to you. I think that was our road to Eukanuba. A little bit was through our association with you and your effort to help us with that line of communication.
Yep. And then Lucky Duck Kennels have been so supportive over the last few years. And then our new partner the last couple of years is Thor Boats, J. Paul Jackson, who is a old retriever, one of the oldies from the beginning. He started a boat company called Thor Boats. And so he gives out a boat we draw for the boat.
Yeah.
Used to you'd think about giving it to the winner. Now that we have 2 winners with the Pro and the Am, he's not going to give me 2 boats.
Yeah.
But
that's pretty good odds of winning a nice boat.
Well, what we decided instead of giving that to the winner is to take every guy that's qualified and we draw from a bucket at the event. And so one lucky winner that's qualified.
Oh man.
Last year it was Dakota Best. who was like, it was his first time at his crown. He's rode his son and he's young, young, and he won that boat. He just picked it up at Pepper's Pond last week. So that was pretty cool. So
you've had good sponsorship support, and part of that's your credit to you for going out there and drumming it up.
It's definitely tough, and it's definitely different than it used to be back in early days. Just the way people market and the way we get your game out there. Back then it was all television, and now there's just so many outlets with social media and YouTube and all those things. There's so many different outlets. So it's a lot more these days to think about.
Yeah, it is. But it adds a lot to the events.
Oh, it does. Totally. It totally does.
The sponsors love
it.
But.
And we I love doing the live stream. It's a lot. You can go back and watch it, but it's all day.
Right.
For 5 days. Like from 8 a.m. to like dark.
Yeah.
It's like it's rolling all day. So, and we get a lot of people that just put it on while they're working and just watch it.
That'd be me.
It's just rolling, So that's kind of cool, and I think it's fun, and it gives people an idea how the game's played, and just listening to the commentary, and you learn so much from them about the game, about what's happening. It's just been really, really good.
Yeah, I agree. So looking forward, I know one of the things you started that there may be some you can't talk about yet. I know one of the ones you can talk about that you kind of branched into is the college series.
Oh yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
The college series is that's kind of a true to my heart thing. I started it. I think we had our 6th one this year, so I started it 6 years ago. First couple of years were really good. So
you do
strong.
one of those
a
year?
year. And the first one we did, it was like I just wanted a kid with their dog. It had to be their dog, and I was real adamant about that. And it worked out. We got some kids with some dogs, and we had probably 20 kids maybe. The next year,
is the test itself a little bit more appropriate for that?
No. I thought like we're gonna have a dumbed down SRS, kind of pull it back a little bit, and it wasn't like that, because these dogs they brought were dogs that some of them were already playing the game with the pro.
Okay.
And that pro happens, so the SRSU, it can be a kid, a dog, and a coach.
SRSU, as in university.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that first year, like they have a coach and a student. Okay. So he can have up to 3 students or whatever. So what's unique about that is that the coach is right behind the handler in a chair. Oh. So he's coaching. Through the whole thing.
Okay.
So that was really cool. I mean, everybody really enjoyed that. And the year 2 was pretty good, and then year 3 was COVID, and and of course that was like just not going to happen. No students, no parents going to send their kids to some different state and all that. So it just kind of got bad. And by a couple of years after that, or after COVID year, the next year, some of these kids now have graduated. They're gone. So now you're starting all over to try to pull those kids and find them. And that's been the hardest thing for me. And I really rely a lot on the pros.
And it probably depends on where it's held, right? That's got to be.
Yeah, and I started moving it. Okay. We moved it to South Carolina. We went to Alabama this year. So it's basically getting these pros and AMs to find a student or one of their kids or niece or nephew or whatever, and bring them with their dog. We changed those rules over the first couple of years because the students asked, like, hey, I have a friend that wants to do this, but she doesn't have a dog. And it's like, hey, can we let them run somebody else's dog? Can we go ahead and... So that's what happened. So the pros have the dogs, and they're like, hey, you can run... They're running Ferraris.
Right. No kidding.
So they're learning a lot. The coach is helping them. So it's really a lot of fun. And it's amazing how many girls I have in the SRSU.
That's great.
Our hardest problem with all that is to try to figure out how to build that and to find the students. They're out there. It's just finding them.
Yeah.
So that's always our challenge. And I still can't figure that out.
Yeah, but you love it.
I do love it. And even if we have a small amount, we had a pretty small amount this year. But it's just, once you do it, it's so much fun, and it's so worth it, So I really, really enjoy that.
Yeah, I knew you did.
And we have a bunch of things coming up the pipe.
Yeah, I was just going to say, is there anything you want to...
I can't really talk about them yet, but
what's the future look like for SRS?
I mean, definitely growth.
Yeah, you're
definitely
growing. The number of events, just last year to this year is
it's like the events that are requested are more than we can do because we just can't marshal all of them. You know, that's one of our biggest problems.
A lot of those are HRC clubs, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Holding those.
Yeah. So it's just trying to, it's like it's growing faster than we can keep up with. So we're just trying to, you know, maintain, not try to rush too much on things, try to add a few things each year. We go through rules every year, make sure everything's right, or change a rule or add a rule. So I feel like next year's going to be, you know, we're celebrating 25 this fall, which is a big deal. Yeah, it did. Like really fast. So there'll probably be some changes after that, I think. I mean, I feel like we're going in the right direction with those things. Yep. And I always, you know, like I said, for anybody that's listening, if you have suggestions and you're listening, we're all ears. You just send them in because we talk about them.
Right.
Nothing's going to happen till the end of the year, but we are going to talk about them and we're going to make the change or not, you know.
Well, you got UKC's support, you know that. Although we do I feel bad about all the, you know, the work you're doing for us keeps you away from work I know you've got to do on producing other shows, taking care of SRS.
I split it
producing all of our stuff. Hey, Shannon, how come my shed dog videos not ready? Well, because I'm doing 5 other things. But it's been a great relationship.
Yeah, it is. I love it.
I certainly count you as a friend, and it's fun, and I love working on projects with you. So, all right. Well, I'm glad it worked out this week. We got to go back to a dog show. Our work's not done yet.
We have to go do some more
it was nice to take a little break, come into the UKC studio. We shouldn't leave before we tell our listeners how to find out. Where do they go to find out more about SRS?
You can find more about SRS at superretrieverseries.com. And then you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Perfect.
I got a little TikTok started, but not very much. I'm just trying to stick with the 2 right now.
I wouldn't find you there anyway. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Alan, I know we both have new Dogtra Pathfinder 2s. How are you liking yours so far?
I'm liking it. I've even had the opportunity now to use mine where I didn't have service, where I download the map of that area, and it works flawlessly. Love it.
I agree. I really like my Dogtra Pathfinder 2 as well. I've used it quite a bit the past few months. I really like the crystal clear maps. I like that it doesn't lose service very much, and I don't have many bad things to say about it at all. Dogtra Pathfinder 2, the official GPS collar partner of UKC. Thank you for listening to the UKC Hunting Ops Podcast. Be sure to give us a follow so you don't miss any of our new episodes or content.